If you're all around a bunch of people that are catty bitches that make $60,000 a year, guess what? You're going to be a catty bitch that makes $60,000 a year. And then you're going to sit there being like, why am I a catty bitch that makes $60,000 a year? This is not fair. There's other people. I went to school with Jim Bob over there. He's not a catty bitch. He's not making $60,000 a year. He actually did something with his life and now he's making $1 million. But instead of being like, oh, I wonder what he did, you'd be like, I'm just going to go tear him down, because that's easier to tear people down than to ask the question.
Welcome to the Online Entrepreneur Experience podcast that details the ins and outs, the how-tos, and the ups and downs of living a life of an online business owner.
Welcome to another episode of the Online Entrepreneur Experience. I got my boy, Mr. Jarret Jenny, SWR, here with me, and I'm, of course, the Viking marketer, and we got some amazing bombs to be dropping on you guys today. This is a topic that I've been talking about just organically to people for a while, and Jarret brought it to my attention that he wanted to jam out about it, and we're both really, really stoked. So get that popcorn, sit down, and get ready for it. But what are we talking today about, bro?
Super simple topic, and it's something that every single person that's listening will relate to because we're all human, right? We're going to be talking about agreeing or disagreeing or not having the same views as other people.
Yeah, and I think this is something that obviously every time you have an opinion, that it comes up, right? And everyone has multiple opinions every single day. And there's some people that like just have that full stance on, that you have to agree with them. And there's other people that have the full stance on like, it's okay, like we can just move around. So like, what do you often run into the most? Do you find more people are just like, no, my opinion is like gospel, or is this like, it's okay. I find it fine that you don't agree with me.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably a 50-50 split, but I can tell you like right off the bat that the people who have no time to listen or can have a adult like open discussion about something, those are the people that aren't going anywhere. Like, because it's not even necessarily about changing someone's mind or making them think exactly like you do. The world would be a pretty fucking boring place if we all thought the exact same thing, but it's the process of getting there. And it's, even if you're not going to change your mind, it's why did they arrive at the conclusion that they came to? And if you look at those steps and that thought process that they have, maybe it'll make you think differently about something.
Yeah, I think that is the biggest key, is just to be curious. Like, be curious of like why somebody else thinks something. Like I had one buddy that was visiting me this last weekend, and he had different thought process behind investing and whatnot into his money. And I disagree with his approach. And so I asked him questions about it and everything. And it turned out that it was just like he agreed with my processes, but he was just too lazy to do the investing steps. So yeah. That's the reason why I was doing that. But I could have just been like, you're an idiot, you should think like that. But instead I was curious and started asking those questions. So why do you think so often when people do have this like very, very slight opinion that you need to think this way, you need to be this way, why do you think that when people are that way, it never goes smoothly?
When you're on that track and you have that one track mind, these people are blinded. They're not seeing anything else that's going on. And it's not about what got you to your opinion. Most of the time, what forms this opinion is the process in which it takes to get there. So if one person sees something one way and they have this experience, and that shapes them to have this opinion, but maybe for the other person, things went a little bit smoother, and so they arrive at the exact same destination, but because their route was smoother, they have a different opinion and outcome. And these people that have, this, you have to agree exactly with what I have experienced and what I think and what my opinion is. That's the problem right there, is they're so closed-minded that they're like, okay, there's more than one way to arrive at a destination. And just because I had this intense experience doesn't mean everybody else did. So they're not thinking that life is very malleable. Things happen differently. Things happen at different paces, different times. And those people that are so set in my experience is the only experience, like that's detrimental because you're never going to grow if you never change.
You're stuck at that point in time, and who wants to be stuck, right? Like it's so funny that you see those people. And I heard this saying, I don't know if I said it on the last podcast as well, but I heard this saying recently that people that generally judge other people how they make their money and everything are not the people that actually have ever had that money to spend it. And you oftentimes it's like people have these opinions with no experience behind them or no actual data behind it. So like, what do you think like a lot of those people's like opinions and come from that they're so stuck on? Like, do you think it's like more insecurity based? Like, do you think it's just like they just have like a big ego? Do you think that they actually think they're right? Or where do you think that all comes from?
I think it goes right back to your experience. It's everyone's going to have a different experience. And if you've never had those experiences to get to that point, you're going to have an opinion that's not rational. If you make, it's like the saying about millionaires, right? Other millionaires don't question how millionaires spend their money. Like that's not a thing that happens. And people that have never had that amount of money, it's really easy to be like, oh, it must be nice, it must be nice. So if I take that into my own personal life, it's easy to look at something and not understand the process it took to get there and be like, oh, it must be nice. I got 3 vehicles that are fun and they're nice vehicles, and I get compliments on them all the time. I have an old mini truck straight out of the 90s, like no rust, just immaculate little truck. I drive that around, and every old guy in town's like, oh, it must be nice. I wish I could find one that was that nice. Or I paid $500 for that truck. $500. Like I found it at a junkyard and it was just a fluke, and I'm like, I gotta have this thing. And then my Audi, I actually traded up to get that vehicle. And I especially the Audi, just because they have that like stigma around them, but it's like, oh well, I wouldn't have spent my money on that. Like, dude, that's expensive. And I'm like, I started with like a $300 car and I just progressively traded up until I got the Audi. So like my total investment in that car is probably $1,200. Like I have no money into getting that car. And people, but if you don't understand the process and you're that stuck in your ways and you're that stuck in your opinion, it's assuming makes an ass out of you and me. Like, and that's where their hard-headedness becomes, it gets in their way. And it's like that graphic. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's like a little political cartoon. It's a picture of a saw, right? Like an old school saw with a wood handle on it. And there's a python wrapped around it. And he's bleeding, right? Because he's like constricting this saw, and it's his own anger and hard-headedness is killing him.
Yeah. It's so funny how that is. And that's how so many people go through life, right? They go through life and they just keep making the same decisions instead of just being curious, asking those questions. And it's funny because if they would have just asked you, like, oh yeah, man, it just took me multiple years. I only actually paid $1,200 for this car. If you look at it in like an outside perspective, they'll be like, what? Right? Like it's very fascinating, but unless people get curious, unless they actually care, right? But the problem is most people just think about themselves, right? It's all about them. It's all about what they're interested in, what's going on for them. And I often find myself thinking, be like, well, what would you do with it then? And they never have an answer. It's just they're saying that you're shit. And it's just to essentially bully you. Like, do you not feel bullied in a lot of those kind of conversations?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's like you said, it comes down to it's how do you want to get to your opinion? How did you get to your opinion? And it's most people don't listen to learn anything. They listen to reply, right?
Yeah.
People, and so you miss that whole process. And you can have completely different opinions. Like I'm not going to go into politics, but like politically speaking, I have friends who are polar opposite from my beliefs and my standpoint, right? But we're fucking adults. Like they're still my friends. I don't hate you because you think something differently than I do. And well, there's plenty of them. We'll sit down and we'll just talk. And it's like, okay, I'm not going to agree with you on this, but how did you arrive to that conclusion? And it'll open your mind up to, how did I get to my conclusion, and how do these two things mesh together a little bit? That's what it's about. It's about being able to see what the process to form the opinion is, more so than it is about the opinion.
Yeah, and people are so outcome based, right? It's that transaction, and they just get so focused on that outcome. And it's like, well, sometimes the outcome are the exact same outcome, but it was just the, like you said, how to get there and everything like that. But people get hung up on that because there's like a red or a blue attached to this outcome. And it's just like, well, we're really talking about the exact same thing, and we're really going to the exact same place. But just because mine has a red and you have a blue, you're upset with me? Like and people just get that like ego into it, right? And it doesn't end up making sense. And if more people could just pull back and just be curious on it, like I think the world would just be such a crazier place. So like, is there a time that like may have been a more volatile situation that happened in your life where people weren't so, say, curious and they're more like stuck in your opinion, if you can recall?
Oh, I got a really good one, happened a few months ago actually, and I was in my shop working on some cars, and I had a lady call me, and she was coming in on a tow truck, and she showed up, and we unloaded her car. I pull it in, put it on my lift, and I have a very opinionated sign hanging up in my shop. And one of the only reasons I have the sign is because one of my buddies actually made it for me. He's got like a laser CNC machine, and I thought it was funny. And I'm like, this is, it's a piece of art at that point. And I'm like, I'm hanging this up. It's very industrial looking. It's awesome. And I just happen to agree with it. Right. And it's not offensive or anything like that. It's just very like on one side versus the other. And this lady's talking to me, and she's super nice old lady. And then she's like, oh my God. And I'm like, what? And she looks at it and she's like, really? And you could just see this like wave of anger come over her face. And I looked at her, I'm like, look, ma'am, I'm just here to fix your car. Like, you don't have to agree with me. Like, I'm doing this thing that is completely unrelated, and it doesn't mean that I'm a bad person or you're a bad person. Like, you have to move past that.
That's so funny because it's so often, and I would say more in like relationships, like your relationship with like your girlfriend, or like say mine with my like wife or whatever. I see that happen a lot more. That's actually something that both of us had to work on a lot. It's just like stop focusing on the things that don't matter. Just focus on like the thing that does matter. You fixing her car has nothing to do with a sign up on the thing. And it wasn't like you pointed at her and told her your opinion. It wasn't like you said, read my sign, all those kind
Yeah.
of things, like any of that type of stuff. But it just, the people get so focused on these things and they just can't let it go. And once again, I just think it all feeds back into her ego. She must have had some type of ego or past experience. And it wasn't like you were judging her on her past experience, but she was deciding to judge you. And they don't want to be judged, but they're okay with judging you. Like, don't you find that honestly one of the most often things that happen in these cases?
Yeah. And it's, you meet these people, and there's this stigma, I think, nowadays in our present day and age, that people, oh, I'm so awesome, I'm so open-minded, and screw you for having an opinion, I'm open-minded. But a lot of these people, and I'm generalizing here, but a lot of these people are open-minded until you disagree with them. And then you disagree with them, it's like, oh, I thought you were all about acceptance and love and peace and unicorn parts, and now I don't agree with you, and you're pissed at me. Like,
Yeah,
you're a walking contradiction.
yeah, 100%. And it's just like, you can't see you're open-minded, but then not listen to anybody else. You're just saying you have a well-versed opinion on things, but your opinion is the only one that matters. You just know a lot about a lot. And it's just like, that's not open-minded. You're just using one word to make yourself seem better over here. And I think so often that's what people do, is the vague statements that happen in our society right now are the things that hurt so many people. And I find this in all aspects. And if you're just like, I'm going to fix your car, and somebody's just like comes in and just brings in and they're like, fix my car, Jarret, and you're like, cool, fix my car. So you're just like, oh, like, I saw your belt is like frayed, I'll just replace your belt. And you replace their belt, and then they come up and pick their car and they drive out and they get in a car accident because they wanted their brakes fixed. Well, you didn't fix their car the way that they wanted to, but they didn't tell you how you were supposed to fix their car, right? They just make these vague statements. And I think this is something that should be taught so much more, is if people were just more specific about these topics, they would be so much like more able to fix their issues. But they use these all-encompassing things and then blame it on you for not agreeing with them or understanding them, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, they jump right to they skip the process. They skip the process and they go right to the outcome. And well, that's just how it should be. That's just how it is. And I see that, again, not to bring up, cars too much, but you see that all the time. Like people come in and then a month later something else fails or it's a machine, and they go, well, you just fixed my car. It's like, I fixed one part of your car. Like, I'm sorry that this happened to you, but it's life, right? And you can't skip the process and go right to the end result and then assume that everything's going to be hunky-dory and everyone's going to understand. And that's where
Yeah.
people get with their opinions. They don't want to take the time to have a conversation. They just, nope, this is what I think, and I feel very strongly about this, and you need to agree with me or piss off.
And that's it, man. It's instead of like being good, they just want to feel good. It's like, just agree with me. I don't care what that opinion gets me to, but I just agree with me so I can move on with my life feeling great about myself, but not being great. I'll be my worst version of myself. And this is it's so funny because I was talking about this on our community call last night, and I was like, you have these friends, right? And these friends will be like, the person will be like, oh man, I just stole something. And they'll be like, oh, like, what'd you steal? And you'll be like, oh, I stole like, did you steal like $100 or something? And you'd be like, no, I stole like 5,000. They're like, oh, same thing, 5,000 bucks, no big deal, like it's all good. Oh, like, yeah, I just ran somebody over. Oh, like, did you like just run over their foot or something like that? No, I murked them, they're done. And they're like, oh, well, that's, it's probably their fault anyways, they shouldn't have been in the road, and always making excuses for you. And those are those people that you want out of your life. But that's how so many people want to be treated. It's just to be told the things that they want to hear instead of the things that they need to hear to be better. Like, and I think with online business, it goes so much to what you were just saying, is like, people will, and just business in general, people will be like, well, I'm really, really good mechanic, I'm a really, really good copywriter, I'm really, really good at sales, but they're like, I'm not making you money, this business must be broken. Well, it's just like, well, business is more than just one thing. You don't have to just be good at one thing, you have to be good at multiple things to make your business go well. Like, you could be a good mechanic, but your business could suck because you don't know how to market yourself and don't know how to run, like, bill people and all those kind of things. Like, it could go to crap, right?
Oh, and 1,000%. When I spent 8 years at the Toyota dealership before I got into online business and YouTube, and then cars is something that I'm just a very hyper person, and I've always loved cars to the point where when I was 5 years old, even older than that, but I'd be driving with my parents and they'd get sick of me mentioning every car that I saw like go by, like, and so it's something that I decided I wanted to keep doing. I was like, okay, I have these other things, and all of my business endeavors are very diversified, like online business, YouTube. I teach martial arts, if we haven't ever mentioned that before. And, cars is another thing that I do, but it's like, you have to decide. Like, I decided that I wanted to keep that in my life. And so I was like, I'll open a shop. Like, I was a mechanic. I was not okay with working for someone day in and day out at this big corporate dealership where they didn't give a shit about you. And I was getting paid pennies on the dollar to be a slave for this company. But the one thing that was good about that job was I was able to lock up my box and just go home at the end of the day and forget it, right? Like, and then the next day, get in, get your coffee, unlock the box. It's not like that now. Like, I'm still a mechanic, but I'm also the service writer. I'm also the parts runner. I'm also the bookkeeper. And like you just said, like, you could be the world's best mechanic, but if you have no people skills, you're not well spoken, you can't talk to people, you're never going to make any money. Like, you have to be a well-rounded person, and people just like to dodge the process. They like to dodge the process of like, oh, must be nice to have the success, or I have this opinion because this happened to me and fuck you. But they don't want to have the hard conversations. I just had an issue, and it wasn't a big issue, with someone that I do business with. And last night it was kind of like a little bit rocky. And then I was like, all right, well, whatever. And I just, quit talking to them for that point in time. And I got a call this morning, and it was like nothing ever happened. Everything was great. Everything was fantastic. And I was the person who kind of indirectly brought it up again. It was like, no, this, whatever. And now it's kind of at a stalemate again. Well, it would have just been easier just to let it go. Like, okay, nothing ever happened. But if you don't fix the process, it's going to repeat itself, So I'm going to have a little bit of conflict in my day because I chose to, recognize that, oh, this thing isn't just over. Like, you can't just pretend it's gone and that's just the way it is. Like, I brought it up. And so it's going to give me a little bit of resistance and a little bit of conflict, but in the end, it's going to make it better.
No, I love that so much because that's what so many people do wrong in life. And this will be another point that most people will agree to disagree. So, like, my wife's, her parents, and she told me this, like, when we were getting into marriage, she's like, my parents never ended up finishing off fights. They would get into fights and then they couldn't come to conclusions. So they would just do what that guy did, just wake up the next day, no longer pissed and just move on with life. Well, guess what? That grows up resentment and it builds and it builds and builds, and eventually you get a divorce. So it's just like, I care too much about you as a person I do business with, so I'm going to have the tough conversation. But most people get offended that you'll even bring up that, oh, I just thought it was over. Who said it was over? Did we come to a conclusion? No, just because we stopped talking because it was probably more amicable at that moment in time to stop talking and more conducive to a solution. Yeah, that's why we stopped talking. So we still have not fixed this problem, and this problem will just keep coming up and actually will get worse if you don't solve it. And that's what most people can't figure out with these kind of aspects.
Yeah, and it's just that circles right back to, you know, forming an opinion, and why people get so nasty with each other is it's much easier just to say I'm right and you're wrong than to be like, okay, well, I want to understand why I think you're wrong, and maybe that will bring us to some sort of middle ground. You know, that's true open-mindedness. True open-mindedness is not feeling strongly about one thing or another and then not being willing to listen or to, you know, face any sort of adversity. You have to be able to look adversity right in the freaking face and just smile at it and be like, I welcome you. Let's talk about this. Let's figure it out, you know? But 90% of the population will not do that because it's not easy. It's much easier to surround yourself with people who think just like you and be happy and pretend that the other stuff doesn't exist. And that will get you nowhere really fast.
100%. It's making the right choices that are going to bring you to the place that you want to be. If you're all around a bunch of people that are catty bitches that make $60,000 a year, guess what? You're going to be a catty bitch that makes $60,000 a year, and then you're going to sit there being like, "Why am I a catty bitch that makes $60,000 a year? This is not fair. There's other people. I went to school with Jim Bob over there. He's not a catty bitch. He's not making $60,000 a year. He actually did something with his life, and now he's making $1 million." But instead of being like, "Oh, I wonder what he did," you'd be like, "I'm just going to go tear him down," because that's easier to tear people down than to ask the questions. And that is the one big thing that I think has the reason why, like, my wife and me have a happy marriage of over 10 years is because we had to make those tough changes. Like, before, when we first started talking, she would just agree with everything I said. Like, she would just agree all the time because she thought that was just easier. But that built up a lot of resentment, and then she started coming at me because of it, which didn't help me in life. Like, and it didn't help her in life. So I no longer take yeses from her. I say, no, I want to accept your yes. Don't just agree with me. Be like, tell me what you actually think. And because I'm curious, I actually want to know what she thinks. I married her for a reason, right? But that's the problem, is like, you have these friends, and these friends are friends with you for like, are they friends with you because they actually want to hear your opinions and your insights and what you can do for their life? No, they just want to feel good. Like, you're their endorphin hit. You're the dopamine. Please, Jarret, keep giving me this dopamine. Like, I'm addicted to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and when you care about someone or the results that happen in their life, I like the example of not accepting all of your wife's yeses, right? So, like, me and my girlfriend, when we first, you know, started dating, which was a while ago now, but when we first got together, I wanted so badly to, you know, like, make her life good. You know, I enjoyed spending time with her, you know, and like, so I didn't know how to say no. Like, and not in a sense of like her taking advantage of that, but like, if I had a really busy day and I was like half asleep and not feeling good and she'd ask me to do something, I'd always say yes. Well, it got to a point where I couldn't possibly fulfill all those yeses, you know, like, or if I did show up, I was physically there, but I was exhausted. And one day I showed up, I said yes, I showed up, I was sitting there and I'm like half asleep at the counter. And she got all pissy. And I was like, you know, what's wrong? What's wrong? And she looked at me and she goes, you don't know how to say fucking no. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, and she's like, I'm not mad at you, but like, you can tell me no. Like, I'm not going to be upset. Like, if you're too tired to come over or you have too much going on, just go home. Like, it's fine. You know?
I think that that is the biggest issue is so many people do that, and then you're probably growing some resentment to her, like lying on the counter. Why the fuck am I even here? Like,
Mm-hmm.
why am I here with you? Like, I should be sleeping. I'm not taking care of myself and blaming her for it, but it's your own decisions because you just agreed to agree and to agreed to disagree. Like your thought tonight is the best thing that could happen tonight is us hanging out. For me, the best thing that could happen tonight is me going to sleep. So,
Yep, absolutely.
and because you just agreed to agree instead of agreed to disagree, and then went about it being like, okay, well, we're both going to live our best lives. You ended up having some combativeness, and it's so funny because if you would have just had the combativeness by saying no in the first place, you wouldn't have had that issue in the first place, right?
Right. And it full circles back to just being open-minded, you know. And she said, she's like, look, I'm not gonna think that you don't want to spend time with me. Like, I understand that you want to spend time with me, but you got to take care of yourself. Like, if you just worked a 14-hour day and you're exhausted and your back hurts and you know you have all this other stuff to do that's stressing you out, go take care of some of that stuff. Like, I'm not gonna be upset about it, but you have to be honest with yourself. Like, you know, and it was indirectly more, her being upset was indirectly more her feeling that I wasn't being honest with her and I
Yeah.
wasn't being genuine. She's like, I know you care about me, but if you trust me, like, know that I'm not going to be upset about this thing. You know, it's fine. It's trivial. Like, one night, like, we're fine. Just go take care of yourself.
Yeah, 100%. And so many people are dishonest because of that reason. And I think dishonest is this word that gets, once again, like a vague term that gets thrown around, right? Like being like, oh, you lied to me. Well, I didn't lie to you, but I did lie to you, right? Like I didn't want to be here because I need to sleep. But instead of just being open, honest, open-minded, you just say the things that other people want to hear. So you just keep going down that pathway, and it's just not good. It's just better to be so much more open and honest. And that's something I had to learn as like a business coach. I used to just tell people what they wanted to hear, but then they wouldn't get the success they wanted. So now, like, I'm just more like give them the kindness, but the kindness in the way that this is what it takes to be successful, not change the parameters around success for what they feel like the parameters around success should be. I've changed it to being the like, these are the parameters. You have to meet those requirements. You aren't meeting those requirements right now, but I'm going to help you meet those requirements. And this is, I've got so much more feedback from people in a positive way, which is the funny thing, because in my head, I thought I would get so much more combativeness because of that. But because I'm so much more honest now about what it takes, people see that and they appreciate it. The right people, obviously. There's other people that will go cry and post on social media how mean I am. But I'm sure you know exactly what I mean by that, right?
Well, and people need something to work on. You know, if you go into a live training or you go to someone that you believe is good at this skill that you're trying to get better at, and they constantly just tell you, oh, you're doing a great job. Well, there's no value in that. You know, there's nothing for you to work on. It's like, okay, so do I just, you know, do another copyright or make another piece of content or another ad that's exactly like the one I just did? Like, you're never improving. Like, you have to be, you can be constructively criticized and not have someone talking to you like an asshole. Like, that's where you're going to grow.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that is the thing that so many people think. It's just because they have an opposition view, they think they have to get amped up and be an asshole or jerk or a biatch about it or whatever it is, right? Like they think that that has to be the way. Like I don't ever approach anybody like that. I'm like, you're doing these things wrong. Like these are the things you have to do right. There's no emotion. It's just this is
Yep.
A to Z, right? So let me just make sure that I'm summing this up correctly for you. So you're saying the ripple effect from just agreeing to agree instead of agreeing to disagree or being curious or just being honest is that you won't grow, you're going to have limited success, and you'll live in a delusion. Is that all correct?
Absolutely.
So do you have anything more that you want to expand on that other than start disagreeing, start being honest, and start being actually open-minded with specificness around it?
Not really. I mean, I think this has been awesome. Just to recap, I think you have to start asking the questions and not just slamming the answer.
Oh, frick, that's so profound. Not just slamming the answers. And that's what so many people do. They just slam it. They're just like, no, this is not how it is. It's like, nah, bro, that's not how it is, right? I love that,
Absolutely.
man. I love that. But I think this has been another epic episode together, man. I've really appreciated it. I hope you guys have all appreciated it, because I think the stuff that we've gone over the last few weeks has just been super, super amazing.
Absolutely. I agree.
Awesome, man. Awesome. All right. Well, we appreciate you guys. We want to know and hear from you guys. If there's something that you disagree with us about, we want to hear about it in the comment section. So guys, hit us up in the comment section. Let us know. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. And we will see you next week. All right. Thanks for tuning into the Online Entrepreneur Experience. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any episodes that we're releasing and any of these amazing pieces of value that we're giving out. And if you could take the time out of your day and leave us a review, we'd be so grateful. We look forward to seeing you on that next episode.